All right, so let's get started. This is Intro to Coding. We're going to be talking about arrays and objects and hashes. So let's look at arrays. So arrays are ordered integer index collections of data, and each element in an array is associated with and referred to by an index. What that is saying is this is just a numbered list that starts with a 0. So think about you have a list and then each item is going to have a number with it, starting with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So for example, here we have a numbers variable and we're setting it equal to an array. Now what this is going to look like in your computer is you're going to have in memory, you're going to have this list of the data where you have the values stored in memory, and those are going to have these indexes, and this index gives us a way we can access them. So for example, if I wanted to grab the first thing from this array, I'm going to do numbers square brackets 0. That will give me that first item in the array. I can also do numbers 7. That's going to give me the last item. If I try to do numbers 8, well, there is no 8th element index here, so that would be nil. So something that comes along with arrays is we get some built-in functions. You know, to fix that spelling, but let's see here. We can grab the length of the array. Length and size, these are the same. We can grab the first element. We can grab the last element. We can get an array and we can get the first 5 or n elements here. We can print the last 5 by the drop method. We can see if an array is empty. We can see if an array has an item in it. We can add to an array. There's 2 different ways we can add an item to the array. We can use the .push method, or we can use the double chevron. We can unshift. So unshift's going to add at the start of the array. So this would add -1 to the start. I can insert. And this insert, I can add 4 and 5 at the index 3. So I tell it where the index I want to start, and then I can add items from there. I can pop. That's going to delete and return the last item, and I can shift. That will delete and return the first item. And I can call delete at, so I can delete a specific index. And we'll go over these in code. And something to note, there's a lot more of these methods on arrays. And there's also, you're not going to be able to remember these. I surely don't remember all of these methods. I always am looking at the Ruby docs or documentation. And just what I mean by that, I can search for Ruby arrays. And I can go in and I can look at all the methods on arrays. And these are also going to have examples and descriptions about these methods. So if you're ever not sure, you can't remember, coding is an open book test. So be good at Googling stuff and reading the documentation, because there's just too much to memorize. All right. So yeah, there's also some built-in functions to iterate over. So I can take an array and I can loop through in an array. And there's some different kind of ways I can do this. There's a .each method where I can go through each method and then perform a function on each of those items. There's a map function where I can go through each item in an array and perform a function, and the return value of that function is going to get thrown into a new array. This is good if you want to update your array into some new data. There's a filter method where we can go through each item in an array, perform a function on that item, and if that function returns true, then we're going to add it to the new array. So this is a good way I could go through like a list of people, and maybe I want to create a new array of people over the age of 21. So we're going to spend a lot of time throughout the cohort. These are never going to go away, so the more you get more comfortable with these, the better. Let's see, hash. We're going to talk about hashes. Now, these might be called something else in different languages. It might be a dictionary, it might be an object, it might be a hash table, hash map. But hashes, what this data structure is, it's really just a collection of key value pairs. It's similar to an array in that we can index and grab values out of it, but we're going to do these via the keys and not an integer. And with the Ruby, the key can be any type. So here's an example of a hash. We can just say person equals, and then we're using the curly brackets, and then we give it the key name, and then the value would be the string John. The key age, the value would be 20. So here's some methods we have on hashes. So we can access, if we wanted to grab, the age of that person, we could do it like this. That's going to grab the value. We can update a value just by grabbing it by the key and then assigning it the new value. We can go ahead and even add a new attribute or a new key onto our hash and then give it a value. We can do person.clear. That would delete all key values. We can go in and delete a specific value. We can see if the hash is empty. We can check to see if it has a key. We can check to see if it has a value present. We can merge two hashes together. We can get a list of the keys. We can see if it has a value. Oh, sorry, this should say value. Person.value, values, that can give us all the values. And then we can also iterate through a hash, which we'll go over some of these. Just going to make this change right now. Values. All right. So there's two main use cases with hashes, and one is describing objects. Think of like a person. You're going to want to have this uniform data to describe people, and you could say, well, every person in my app is going to have a name and an age. So you can have, 100 people, but all of your people are going to have a name and age value. Likewise, you could do that with a car. Car could have make and model. You might have different cars, but they're all going to have make and models. Likewise with a book, every book's going to have a title and an author. Another one is just key value types. I mean, think about a dictionary here where you have the key, which is the word, and then you have the value, which is the definition. So any kind of data structure or like real world object like that, like you could think about maybe like a translation app where you might have a word in English as the key, and then the value would be the word translated to Spanish. So you could have hello going to hola, and then one going to uno. You could have a hash of languages, of programming languages, where the key was the name of the language, and then the value was a description. So there's another use case of hashes. There's more, but I'd say these are the two you're going to see the majority of the time. Okay, so hashes and arrays are able to hold, keep on so many typos in here, sorry. Did this one kind of quick. Hashes and arrays are able to hold not hold any kind of data. So including hashes and arrays. So you can have arrays of arrays. You can have hashes whose values are hashes. You can have an array of hashes. You can have an array of an array of an array of hashes of arrays. I mean, you can just do whatever with this. So get very comfortable with this because this is kind of common. And for example, let's say we have an array of people. And our data looks like this. It is a hash. And our hash has a name attribute, which is a string, a foods attribute, a foods key, which is an array of strings. And then it has an address key whose value is another hash with city, which is a string, and state, which is a string. So our first lecture in this series was data types. And I told you it's very important to have these in mind. And hopefully it's kind of starting to sink in. If you're not getting comfortable with the data types, then this nesting of data, working with hashes and arrays, is going to be even more challenging. I need to be able to say, oh, I have a people. My people variable is in an array of objects. And an object here has a name, string, and it has this food key, which is an array of strings, and it has an address, which is a hash with the keys city and state, whose values are strings. So yeah, it's a mouthful. It takes a while to get used to. Don't expect to get this down in one day or anything, but it's something you should work on. And how do you work on this? What better way than to just write some code? Okay. So let's go ahead and go through these. Let's just start out with our arrays. So let's say I have an array of, numbers. Now we can have arrays of mixed data types, but generally you're going to want to have an array with the same type of data unless you have a specific reason why you're mixing the data type. So let's just do an array of numbers. Let's kind of look at some of these methods. Now I think it's really good when you're learning this, especially if you're a beginner, to type this stuff out. It's really how you get it to sink in your mind. So I can put array at 0, and I'm expecting that to be 1, because that's the first element. I could also put array dot length. So I'm going to get the array dot length. So the length of this array is, I have 9 items, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I'm going to grab the 9th index. And I can't see this. I'm going to switch this to a P, so it prints out the nil. But that is nil. Because remember, arrays are 0-based indexed. So if I try to get the 9th index, well, that's going to not be there. So if I ever want to grab the last item, I can do the length minus 1 to account for that. It's starting at 0. And that gives me the last item. Now Ruby does have a last method, so that's nice as well. Also has a first. We can have the take 5. Let's try running this. And there is my first 5. Now something that is important to note is, are these methods changing your original array? Are they changing the structure? See, this take 5, it gives me a new array with 5 elements in it, the first 5. But my array is left unchanged. Let's look at the pop method. Pop. I'm going to run that. So pop gives me the last item, but notice how it also removes it from the array. So if I run this a couple times, it's removing the last item. I pop it off, I can store that to a variable, or I can just print it out, but it's changing my array. So that can be something to take note of. All right, so I can do an array.push. This is how I can add something on here. Then we can put out our array. So I can add an item to the end of the array. I can also add something to the start of the array. On shift, let's go ahead and add, I don't know, maybe 123. So that adds it to the start of the array. And then if I call shift, that will remove it. So I added it with unshift, and then I call shift to remove it. There's a negative 123, and now it's gone. So yeah, I can use the insert method. Let's do our insert. So I'm going to tell it the index I want to add it at. So let's add like A at the index 1. And there's my A. And then I can add a list of, I can just keep adding things here and it'll add from that index. And then I can delete at a specific index. So let's get rid of that. So if I say delete at 1, that's going to remove the 1 index, which is my 2 right here. So it's 1, 3, 4. So like I said, there's more of these methods. Get some practice with these. Get familiar with them. Don't feel like you have to memorize them. I think it's good to know just what kind of things you can do. Like, I can add items to the front, to the start, to the middle. I can remove items. I can pull stuff from the array without changing it. I can pull stuff from the array with changing it. That kind of thing. All right. So let's look at hashes now. So let's just create a hash really quick. Let's give it a name key, age, 234, cool, whatever. All right. So I can do a puts. If I want to grab an item, I can do this. I can access that. Now, something to note here. I'm going to do this write this in a different way. So there's a new syntax on, well, it's not really new. It's kind of been around for a while. But this was the old way to write a hash. Whose keys are symbols. Just to show you, this is going to work the same way. 34. So what's a symbol? What's this colon name? This is actually a data type in Ruby. So let's just talk about this really quick. Symbols. You can think of a symbol as like a string. It's almost like a constant that's a string, but it's really more code than it is a string. Like it's really not meant to change, but I can kind of use it like a string. And watch, I can do :name. Well, let's just do whatever. We don't have to, whatever. I can call it whatever. Oh, I need to put that out. And there we go. There's our symbol. Because in Ruby, this is just a shorthand now to write this, where we do name : James. And this is kind of my preferred way because this is like JSON-esque, which I'm a JavaScript person, so this looks more like I'm familiar with. But this is the old way to do it. And this is the way you have to do it if your key is not a symbol. For example, you can have a key be a string. You can have your key be any type of data, but a common one would be to have your key be a string, like we saw with the translation example. So my key can be a string, and then if my key is a string, then I have to use this hash rocket syntax for my hash. And then if I want to access, something that's not a symbol, well, I'm just going to access it by the string. So I can do dictionary and then grab the key 1, which is a string. That gives me uno. If this was a number, then I could just access with the key that. So our keys can be anything, and our values can be any type of data. But the most common type you'll probably see is a symbol or a string, I think, or a number or an integer. Those are definitely going to be the 3 most common types. Okay, so let's keep going. Let's look at some new stuff. So I can, like I said, I can grab a person. I can add a new attribute or a new key value pair. So test equals yo. Let's put out our person. So now my person hash has this new key value of test and yo. I can see if it is .empty. That is false. But if I clear it, then it is going to be empty. It's still a hash, but it's just an empty hash. And yeah, I can grab all the persons. I can grab all the keys. This is going to come back as an array. So we got an array of symbols, name, age, and test. Or I can grab the values. And then, yeah, I can say, does it has value? Does it have the value 34 in here? Oh, I forgot the question mark. That is true. Does it have 33? I mean, that should be false, but let's just see it run false. It does not have the value 33. Sweet. So there's those examples. Let's talk about really briefly, just to get a taste of this. Those are just kind of the basics of arrays and hashes. We're definitely going to get more into these, and these are not going anywhere. These are 2 of probably the most common data types that we're going to use. So let's look at just iterating through this briefly. So this will be like our first taste of iterating over these. So let's say I have my array of numbers, and I want to go through each of these and do a thing. So I'm going to use the each function. Now what I'm passing here is called a proc. This is really just essentially kind of like a anonymous function. It's like an unnamed function where this is like going to be my parameter, and so I'm going to, let's just read this, array.each do xxxxx. So this is going to represent each of the things. So I should probably just call this number, because this is an array, and that's actually probably a bad name. Let's call this nums. Be a little more explicit with what this is. So nums is an array of numbers, and let's even just call that numbers. Numbers.each do number. So I can do this. I can put out the number. So I'm going through each thing in my array, and I can do a thing for each of those things. So that's the each loop. The map, let's look at the map. So the map function, I go through each thing, and whatever this proc returns, it's going to throw into a new array. So let's say I want to double my numbers. I want an array of all my numbers doubled. So I can go through each of my numbers, and I can times them by 2. There is an implicit return here. We don't want that here, but what it is really doing is it's going to return this value. So it's going to take the number times 2, and then it's going to put it into this double numbers. So let's look at that. So it went through 1, 2, 3, and it doubled them, and it put it in a new array. And my original numbers array is left unchanged. So I still have that 1, 2, 3, but now I have a new array of 2, 4, 6. I have a filter function. Does something similar where it's going to go through each thing, perform a function, and if this function returns true, it's going to add the thing into the new array. So here my function is, I just want to see, is the number even? If it is, put it into this even numbers array. If it's not even, then discard it. So let's go ahead and type this out, run that. Oh, no method filter. I must be thinking JavaScript land, so it must be select. Yep, so it's select. So it's going through each of the ones, and it's selecting. So in JavaScript, there's a method called filter, so I kind of just got that mixed up in my head. But we're just seeing if the number is even. If it is, let's keep it. So if I said, odd, this would keep all my odd numbers. Say, is the number greater than, 2? Greater or equal to 2. Run that. So that returns 2 and 3. So it's just a good way to filter out the things I don't want, or to select the things I do want. And just briefly, let's go back to our hash. Just say we have a name, Tony, and then our age. I can do an each loop on a object, and what this is going to do, person.each do. Now I have two things here. I really have a key and a value. And the order of this is important. It's not what I call it, it's the order. I can call these things whatever I want, but this first thing here between the pipes is going to be the key, and the second thing is going to be the value. So it's going to go through each key value pair. Then I could do something like this. I could interpolate my key. And then interpolate my value. Run that. So there's the key. The key is name. The value is Tony. The age is, there's the key, and the value is 22. So there's an each on a object. So yeah, that's the basics on, arrays and hashes. So kind of get familiar with this, because what's going to become common, what we'll see a lot of is maybe I have like, a couple people, and then I put those people in an array. So now I have an array of objects. And then I loop over those people. Well, now each of those people, those are really objects. So now I can do something like this. Person. A person has a name, and a person has an age. So I go through my array, I call the each method on my array, and then each thing in my array is an object, and then I can access those just the way I do with that. Another thing to think about is, what if I have I have my object, and inside of here, one of its values is an object. So now I have to kind of drill down into these things. So if I can do puts person1, grab the address. Let's just look at this. Run that. Well, now this is really just a hash. Person1 address is a hash. So if I wanted to access one of those things, one of those values in there, then I just keep on going in there. So that's how I could grab the one. So this is some nested data. Likewise, if I had an array of arrays, how would I grab this B? Well, I could do this. I know I want to go in the first array. I know this is the second item in the array, so that's going to be the first index, or the one index, I should say. And you can always kind of just do this step by step and test it out and run it. See, now I've got that inner array, and now I want to grab the B, which is also the second thing, which is the first index. So yeah, it can get nested, and it takes time and some patience, and most importantly, some practice. This is how you got to figure this out, is just on your own. Go through and kind of type out some of these examples and try to grab these values. Because that's how you're going to make sense of this. So cool, that's it for now. I'm going to put up I'll also do another more in-depth look at our loops and working with this nested data. I'll kind of put out some more videos for that. But yeah, this is kind of the basic stuff. And then it's really just kind of combining this from here on out. So I'll throw out some more videos and we'll do some practice on that. Cool. Peace.